Okay, everybody, like I said, welcome to CAFDA, our first meeting of 2021. And this month's topic is Advanced FileMaker Techniques by Ross Johnson from Soliant Consulting.
So hey everybody, I hope your holiday break was nice. Hope everybody is safe and everyone's family is healthy. So like Phil said, my name is Ross. I live in Chicago. I'm a senior application developer with Soliant. I've been with Soliant for I think about 6.5 years now. And I was recently promoted as a father to a 3-month-old. So the consequences of that is this presentation might suffer a little bit in quality. So I hope you can bear with me. Slightly disorganized here, but at any rate, Phil may have slightly oversold some of the techniques and things that I'm going to present to you today, but it's kind of just a collection of things that I think were kind of cool that I've been working on fairly recently. I think most of them have to do with kind of UI techniques, and some other ones are kind of geared more towards reporting. And so I hope it is interesting and useful to everybody. And before we get started with that, it might be helpful if everybody can go to the link that Phil posted to the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a SharePoint link that links to is not really a demo file, but there's a demo file in there, and there's other supporting documents for some of the things that I wanted to go over. So if you could go in there and I think Michael Lane says he doesn't see it. Let me try to post it again. Or Philly, would you mind posting it again? Yeah, no one's seeing it. Here, maybe I can just copy it from here.
I'll post it.
Oh, okay, well, I just posted it. So if you go there, it should bring you to SharePoint page, I think, and then you just download the folder. All right, so give everyone maybe a second to do that, and maybe I'll just give a quick overview of what I'd like to go over. So I got 5 things in the hopper here that I think were kind of fun or cool to show you guys. The first thing would be a multi-page PDFs from TextBlob. Second is a find in page feature. Third is a checkbox selector, so it's another UI feature. Fourth is a fuzzy search feature. And then the fifth thing is dynamic PDF reports. So let's start with the first thing here, the multi-page PDF from TextBlob. So what I mean by this is sometimes we have clients that have huge text blobs that have paragraphs of text that we try to convince them to split that into different records or keep it, or kind of chop it up somehow so we can do better data management and reporting on it. But there's some clients who just insist on having their giant text blobs. So one of those clients is one that I've been working for the past few years, and I'll be referring to a lot for a lot of these demos, which is ISI, and they're a furniture installation company, so office furniture installation company, and they have this system. Let me share my screen. Sorry, you can't see anything I'm doing. And then Phil, did you say should I stop my video? Does that help with the?
Yeah, I think it helps if you stop your video.
All right, I'm gonna do that too. So does everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so this is ISI's part of their solution. They have a huge sprawling 30 file type of solution. And here's an example of, this is just test data. Here's an example of the giant text blob that they wanted to run, they need to run reports on. So here you can see there's just paragraphs and paragraphs of data. The issue here is that, and I think many of you probably run into this before, if you have something like that and you try to create a layout that will report on those text blobs, it's really difficult to get it all on one page. And if you need to go to a second page, you have to do a whole bunch of different, you know, kind of hacks to get it to go to a second or third page. One of those, I guess, solutions that I've seen before is creating a text box that is just really, really tall, and that if you use the when you're printing, if you decrease the size, use the option to decrease the size of that text box, it will print on several different pages, but then you're limited to the height of that that text box. So I was trying to think of a way that we could kind of get around that and have it so the report could be an unlimited length, and we wouldn't have to kind of predetermine the length of the report. So this may be a technique that some of you have used already, and it's kind of just straight FileMaker, old school technique that, you know, is not overly complicated, but seemed pretty useful. So at any rate, just do a quick demo of what the outcome is. So we have here this giant text blob, and then also these daily instruction text blobs, or I guess in this case records, are supposed to be included on the printout. So I'm going to print here. It takes a sec. So here's the result. So it took all those lines in the giant text blob and kind of span them over multiple pages. All right. So so what I'm doing here is using a virtual list, and I'm sure that many of you have heard of virtual lists and probably use them in your solutions. But if you're new to them, there's this good blog article by Jeremy Brown. I'm gonna post it if I can find it. Where the heck is it? Oh, I lost my chat. Sorry. Someone know how to get to the chat. There it is. Sorry. All right. So that's a pretty good link to give you an introduction. And virtual lists are really useful for reporting in particular. So what I'm doing in this case is I'm using a virtual list to kind of slice this data into lines, different lines, and then use those lines as different records. So let me show script. Okay, so when we run the script, what happens is it will take the scope here. So this is the scope, the text field that we're working with, and it'll divide it into different lines based on return characters, and then compile those results into a global field. And so this global field is referenced in this virtual list table. So we have kind of a typical virtual list setup here. We have the row number, and then the project scope goes in this field, and then the row data is referencing the virtual list, or sorry, the global field here, and then getting the row number and showing just that line. So the result, if we open the layout, maybe easier to see. So you can see here the each line is on a separate record. And so our layout is a list layout with a body that will extend to a pretty good height in case there's a lot of text to fit in before there's a carriage return. And so this is set to when you're printing, to contract to fit just the content. And then here I'm showing two different fields here and conditionally hiding them. There's kind of a trick to kind of make a pseudo header. So one, if I want to put in a header, let's see here. Sorry, open the demo file here. So I don't know if you can see this here, but so this is the result that I just ran. And if you see this special instructions to installers, this is kind of a pseudo header. So it's a kind of different section that I wanted to delineate as a header. And so what I'm doing there is inserting in the script to create that header, special instructions to installers. I'm inserting this kind of H1 tag that you kind of typically see in HTML and making it, in this case, white, kind of a bit of a workaround so that it won't show. And then in the virtual list table here, I'm doing a pattern count to see if that H1 is present in the row data, and if so, flag it as a header record. So then in the layout here, if it's flagged as a header record, then I can conditionally hide or show it and have different formatting to kind of give that I guess pseudo subheader here. Okay, is that making sense so far, everybody? Kind of feel like I'm talking into a void.
It's quiet, but there are no questions so far.
Okay, so I guess that if there's and if anyone has any questions or comments or concerns, complaints, or bad jokes they want to interject with, please don't hesitate. Someone is
You're doing great. Keep going.
Thanks. Okay, so I think if no one has any questions about that one, moving on to the second one, which is the find in page, what I'm calling a find in page function, which is kind of like if you have a browser window open and you do like I do here in Chrome, you do Command F and you have this find in page function that comes up, and you kind of just you match on a string that appears on the page. So I kind of wanted to have something like that let me pull up this other area here. Fine. Okay, quote sheet. So this is it's a quote sheet app that I built for the same client I was just talking about earlier, and the issue here was that so they build their quotes in this on this giant list here, and it can get pretty big, and sometimes they need to find the particular line item, but using the native find capabilities in FileMaker would change the found set. And what the goal was to keep the same found set, but just kind of jump like you would in a browser, jump to different records that match your search criteria. So what it ended up looking like here was that right there, I just made a custom menu to kind of co-opt the Command F command and then pull up this find in page feature where I type in a string and it's matching to, in the found set, it's matching to any, to the fields that I define, it's matching to anything that matches your search string here. So it gives you, here I put in table, it's giving me 8 results and I can kind of cycle through those results and jump to the different records where that match appears. And so that gives the user a quick way just to find something. So they're looking for, mobile file. It kind of just, as they type, searches their found set and goes and jumps to the record. So it looks like we have a question.
There haven't been any questions posted. Somebody said very cool, but yeah, I had a couple questions. So when it says like when you did table and said 1 of 8, what is the 8? I mean, I know 8 saying it's 8 places, but what is FileMaker actually saying 8? 8 of what?
So FileMaker, that's a good question. So the total number of matches, so that represents the total number of matches. So if we're putting in a search string here, let's say, I put in work, that's my search string. It's saying 1 of 5. So that means we're on the first match, the record where that the first match is found of 5 matches. So, and I'll go into a minute, like what I'm matching on and how I'm doing that. But what this is telling me is that there are 5 things that match the string work. So in this case, it's matching on workstation. That's part of, work is part of the string workstation. And then if I cycle through them, it goes to the next line that's also matching on workstation. There it's work surface, etc. So it's finding 5 matches essentially.
Right, those aren't records. So what is it? I'm kind of wondering what it's counting. Are you going to show us that? Because like if the work was in 2 different fields in the same record, it would be
exactly.
It would just go to different field in the same record. It's not going through records.
Right, exactly. And so I can demo that real quick with maybe the word table, because I think it will match on table there, table here, and then it's also matching on adjust table height. So yeah, you're right. It's not records. So it's not saying 3 of 8 records. In this case, it's saying 3 of 8 matches like it would in a browser.
Sully asked how you target the fields, and Jeff asked how you preserve the found set, but I don't think it has anything to do with the found set, right? It's just...
Yeah, so those are good questions. And it's not really using FileMaker's find functionality. So the found set is not really even being altered here. It's what we're kind of doing, and I'll show you. Let's see, just get the. What's happening is that when you initialize the feature, which you do by clicking this button here during the Command F. I guess it doesn't. Sorry. Saying open. Okay, now it's initializing. All right, so when I step through here, what it's doing is it's first clearing out this global variable here. That's going to represent our entire found set. And so it just kind of goes through all of the records using get nth record. What's going on? Yeah, get nth record here. And so get nth record, and it's kind of indexing your entire found set. So looping through your entire found set using get nth record and putting in the record number and the field name in the index and saving that to this global field here.
Which is JSON?
Which is JSON, right. And the reason I'm putting in a JSON object is because later on it's really easy to query. So then I can find if when I type in a string where it matches, and then find out what record that is and put it in a second JSON index that'll show you in just a second here. So I'm just going to run. Oops, sorry. So that script just ran to initialize and index the found set. So if I look at found set find data, and I'm going to just format that so it's easier to read. Found set. Oh, sorry, it's global. Found set find data. Still have it paused, my apologies. Run it. Okay. All right, so that went through and indexed my found set. So this is how I'm telling you which fields I want to be searchable by giving it the field name and then the value and then also the record number. And so the reason I'm giving it the record number is that when I then search for a string, so let's see, touch. Then it knows the script will go through and create the result global variable here. Set find data resulted. Yeah, so in this case, it's only matching on one. So I put in Hutch, and the script will go through and create another index of all of the fields that match that and put them in a JSON object here, along with the record number.
So fully qualified field name and the record number, which.
Yeah, fully qualified field name and record number. So that will give me let's see, let's run the script like this. So find. So first clear it out. You do the find, and then it loops over the found set data object here, and then it's just asking, okay, is there a pattern count, or is there a pattern that matches the search criteria for any of those 4 fields? And if so, put it in this found set find data results object here, and kind of build that object up, and then you can use, and then we kind of walk through the results in that variable using these arrow buttons there that go through the results. So these arrows will do mobile something. I'm gonna do another one. Work again. Okay, so if we say this arrow, which is next. All right, so we're saying next, get the record number and field from our found set data results, and then kind of just, oops. And then depending on our field, just go to that field. Then here, say when we go to that field, what's not great is that it'll select the whole content. So I kind of clear out the selection there by putting the set position or setting the position. Looks like we got some.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, Ross Thompson and I had the same question. Is how about on a really large set? If you're looking at 10,000 records,
so
large JSON array.
Yep. So that's a great question, and I don't think it'd be that performant. I mean, there's certainly be performance impacts on a larger found set. So this really would be for smaller found sets, especially if you're kind of you're reinitializing your found set every time you're searching, and if you're doing it, if you're running it on object object modify like I am here. So if I do, B, it's doing that, running that script to find 13 matches for just the string B. So if you're running in a large found set and you're using that on object modify, you're going to incur some performance penalties, I think. But so far I've tested this. Here we have, I don't know, only 32 records, but I've tested it with a couple of hundred, and there's almost no, and this is over the WAN. There's almost no performance impact, even with a couple hundred records. And in this case, so we're working with, then the reason we wanted to create this feature in the first place is because the users are working in a pretty constrained found set. These quote item records this table will get pretty bloated because they make quotes with a bunch of line items, and so there'll be a lot of records here. We'll never want to show all of them. It'll always be kind of found set that's bound to the quote that we're creating, and the quotes that are being created in this case are never going to be more than a couple of hundred line items. So for this use case, it works pretty well. But yeah, you're right to point out that with a large found set, I don't know if it would be the best option.
I noticed that at the top of the script, it looked like you started working on this in 2019 before FileMaker 19 existed.
Yeah.
But one of the things that popped in my head was that execute FileMaker data API script step, and how you can construct JSON from records by basically performing a data API query. So do you have plans to I mean, that might help with the larger data sets to perform a query beforehand to try to pare it down to a similar found set.
Yeah, that's a great thought, and that might be a viable solution for in this use case, because we're not doing too many joins, so we're just looking at really a quote ID. So that's the proposal, and then the quote line item. So we could matching just on one field, and we could get that with the FileMaker, the new function to grab those records as JSON. So yeah, that's a great thought.
How would it work with related data like portal data? Have you thought about that or done it?
I have, and yeah, I was going to give extra credit to anyone who could find the biggest challenge in something like this, which I think is that finding the related data. If you do, if you're using get nth record, I think many of you probably have noticed that it doesn't work for related data. So in this case, it's fine because every field that I'm searching on is in this table. So it's and that also impacts the speed. If I had to find unrelated data, it'd obviously be slower. But in this case, it's all in the same table, so I can kind of loop through it pretty quickly and get all the values I need. But related data is a challenge.
Depending on how much related data you're dealing with, you could have it in a calculation in the local table. The related data as a list, and you could search on that field.
That's a great thought. Yeah.
And the execute data API might give that back to you a lot faster also.
Right.
And
With data API, you can create a separate layout that has just that portal and whatever you're looking for, and try to get that information back. And it just creates a lot of smaller arrays within your JSON array, which can be a little bit tricky. But I don't think it'll affect performance as much as having all the records load. You know what I mean?
Ross, do you mind me asking a bit about the genesis and possible iterations, because I'm thrilled about what I see here, and my guess is a good deal of the challenge is about what you did to come up with the display that says 1 of 5 or 1 of whatever, and make sure that you maintain that as someone browses through this. Because if I had to come up with something like this, my first implementation would skip that and would just rely on the native like perform find replace script step. And I don't know if you've looked into that and then you said, well, that's not close enough to what I want, and then put that to trash, or just general genesis and possible iterations.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding your question right, you're kind of pointing to this, I guess, the match count here, and that you would do it in a different way. Could you kind of explain what you meant by that?
Well, I think short of that, even with the arrows and the rest, there is a script step called perform find replace, and that supports natively a good deal of what is there, but not the display of the 1/3 or an updating that. But it would cycle through whatever is found and in anything that is displayed on screen natively, and you can say match case, match all words, and search for all records, current record, all fields, current field, those type of things.
Oh, I don't know if I was aware of that.
You can find it right under the edit menu right now. If you pull down the edit menu at the top there.
Yeah, but there's a script step for it.
Yep, and this is the same thing. So if you open that up, Ross, if you click the find replace, this is what the script step gives you these options.
Gotcha. Okay.
So like you can control the direction. You can even perform replace, which can be very dangerous.
Oh, that's
that's scary.
Okay, then why processing records? Uh-oh.
Now you're on all records.
So I'm on all records, not the current. So does it work with the current found set, current record?
Well, it's the found set now. I don't know.
Yeah.
How many, but it's also all fields. So in this case, I'm not too sure of why it's giving you a progress bar.
Right. Well, I think one of the cool parts about what Ross did is that he can granularly control which fields he's searching, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Generically searching all fields. So if you have a really wide table, it's got 1,000 fields in it or something, then you're not, searching that way.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to match on, like, say, this product field. So I wouldn't want to put in, if I type in a P, I wouldn't want that to show up in my result because it would just give too many results. But yeah, no, that's a great, was that Robert?
Yes, Robert.
Yeah, good thought. That's very cool. Is there a reason I didn't use the native find replace? Oh, same kind of question, but I guess what Robert was saying is that you can control that with the script. So I could kind of, there would be, I'd still have the option of kind of using my own UI and kind of in the background managing it with a perform find replace. Yeah, great thoughts. So we just want to point out too, if you downloaded the demo file here, if you're interested that you can, I just kind of plopped in, nope, not this one either, sorry.
Find in page.
Find in page, there we go. I just kind of plopped in the layout elements there, so you can kind of copy those if you want, and a quick little screenshot to remind you what it was. And if you open the scripts menu, I know it's kind of a mess, but it's just a way to kind of dump in scripting. So it's kind of just the script I was working with. This gives you kind of a starting point to, put this in your solution if you're interested in doing that.
Have you thought of packaging it into an add-on? Because it looks like, in terms of existing components, the type of thing that we'd see rolled out as an add-on.
Yeah, no, that's also a great thought. I'm a little behind on the new features. As you see, I'm still using 18 mainly. But yeah, that's a great thought for making this more widely available.
The configuration to target the fields may be a bit tricky, but for the rest, it sounds like it's pretty well contained in terms of the components involved.
Yeah. Could be cool. There any other, kind of running short on time, Phil? I don't know.
Yeah. There's no other questions in the chat
Okay.
or anything, so if you want to keep moving.
Okay, let me go to the next one. This checkbox selector. So let me navigate back to where this is. Let's see, what's my project? Okay, sorry, just get this set up. Okay. All right, so the challenge here was, I mean, this is another quick UI trick that may be useful to some of you. And the trick was to kind of just give a way to select a bunch of multiple records to then, you know, process later on. And I've seen ways of doing this where you kind of create different actual records for the user selections. So if we look at the demo here, if I'm going to, let's see, I think I have it in here, yeah. So select multiple, it opens up this card window and it gives you kind of an interface to prompt the user to select these different, in this case, change orders for invoicing, so change orders to process. I've seen in the past some methods where you kind of would hit one of these checkboxes and that action would use the relationship which allows for creation of records to create another record for the user. So it's a user selection record. You wouldn't want to, I think, just have a flag field on this record because that's not multi-user friendly. But yeah, I've seen solutions where you create those records, user selection records, and then when you continue, you kind of just go off of that to process whatever you need to, and that works fine. But I kind of want to come up with a way I could avoid the cleanup, because then you'd have to delete those records afterwards, and then it seemed to me a little bit clunky and slow sometimes to create the records. And I think also to select or deselect all the records was a little cumbersome, because you have to kind of loop through all of them and create user selection records. So I came up with a way that's a lot like the find on page function that I was demonstrating earlier, that uses a JSON object to create the selection. So if I want to do select all, you know, it's really pretty reactive, where it's just we're just creating a JSON object here that holds all the IDs of these records. And then if I unselect one of them, I'm keeping the select checkbox in sync here, so it's not saying select all. And then if I unselect it there, it deselects everything. Let's show real quick what this is doing. Okay, so all right, so if I toggle select all here, all the records are deselected, and then I'm basically just storing the JSON results into this global field. And perhaps people have opinions on whether or not to use a global field or a global variable for something like this. But the reason why here I'm using a global field is that once I build the JSON and put it into that global field, so I build the loop over all of the records and put their keys into the JSON object, and then put it in the global field. And the benefit of doing that, I think, is that instead of using a global variable, is that all of these objects, all of these are button bars, these checkboxes. And if you use a global field, you don't have to refresh the object to get it to change its display. So the reason that's important for this is that these, since these are button bars, within the, cancel that, open the layout. So these are button bars with conditional formatting. And so the conditional formatting here is looking at that global field. And so if the ID of that record appears in the JSON object that's in this global field, it'll evaluate and change the icon color to green in this case. But as a default, the icon color is transparent, so it shows as unchecked. And if you use the global field, then you don't have to refresh the object.
Very cool.
Okay, so should maybe dig into the script a little bit more. Does it make sense to people so far, or do you want to see more details in the scripting?
I think it makes sense. At least I'm getting it, but you can dig in if you want.
Okay, and then maybe real quick, if I'm not seeing anything. Right, so yeah, it's a lot like the other find end page thing I was doing. And then, so once you make your selections, you click continue, and then you just pass on that JSON object to your following scripts to process, and get all the records that the user selected. So if you want to, also put some of the layout objects here, and then some of the scripts, just to, if you want to mess around with it there. It's just, I think here the only thing missing is just the record selection global field. But you can pretty much copy and paste that script into your solution and change your field references.
Excuse me, Ross.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question that might be a dumb question, but the idea of, are you using a pattern count to determine conditional whether you're going to show or hide that checkbox? And, you know, I understand it's a button bar.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you did show us a little bit of that, the JSON object, you're comparing that, but is that a FileMaker function? Just say pattern count in the JSON object?
Yeah, no, great question, Jeff. I think so. It's all FileMaker, and it's not using pattern count. It's building. Let's see, what did I call it? Change order. Yeah, oh, I'm in the wrong file. Sorry. What's going on? Yeah. Okay. Selections. All right. So. Oops. I don't know. The thing with custom menus. All right. So this is what it's writing to that global field here, and it's basically keeping track of this is the key of each record and whether or not it's selected. So it's a Boolean true or false, and the conditional formatting in these checkboxes is saying, okay, get the ID of this record. Does that ID appear as a key on in this JSON object? So it's saying it's basically saying get JSON element ID of name ID here, and if it's then get that value here true, then it will show the check, and if it's false, it won't show the check. So the conditional formatting evaluates the false, and doesn't show the check mark. Does that make sense?
Yes. Speaking for myself.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. Yes.
Awesome.
I have a question or comment.
Yeah.
So I do something very, very, very similar, but
Mhm.
I think I get the value of using a global field because I just use a global variable and I just store the keys, and I do my conditional formatting is based on pattern count, which I guess is possibly less performant, but I do this a lot more in portal rows than records. But was there a performance reason why you went with, and all, at the end of my script, I just pass the object name of the portal that I'm dealing with so the script can be modular. And then I just refresh the portal at the end of the script. So is it a pretty big benefit to use a global field for those reasons, as opposed to just using a global variable?
I think in terms of performance, I don't know if you'll get too much gain. I don't know if anyone else has a different opinion on that, but I think what's really nice is that you don't have to refresh anything. That because the act of changing the global field will force everything that references it to refresh. So for me, that's like kind of the main motivation to using the global field rather than the variable. But doesn't anybody else have a different opinion?
Doesn't sound like it.
No.
I usually do it the way that I think it's Michael who just spoke. I think I usually do it the way he does it, but with kind of the conditional formatting on the row in the portal.
On the pattern count thing, I tend to prefer using filter values, but there's little difference there, I think. So, and I think anyone could implement it in another way also. You don't necessarily need the key for the display itself. You could build an array that is position based, and it will work just as well. But most of the time, you will need the keys anyway, like further down in the process. You might as well get them in the JSON. So
yeah, and that was kind of the reason why I use keys here is that, if you select them all, now you have all the keys in the JSON, and then you can just pass the JSON object to the next script, and then I just remove, because I have another value here that's called all, which if all is selected, and so I just delete that value once I use it. So continue. I got my list of keys here. At some point in the script, I just remove that all value.
I just got a comment. I use the position instead of the pattern count when I'm looking for IDs, just because I think pattern count sometimes takes a little longer than position.
Then position, okay. I guess you could kind of use either one. The problem with pattern count, I think, is that if you have, let's say, if you're using numeric IDs, you have 1, 2, 3, and then you're searching 1, 2, 3, it'll match, but also it'll match on this. So that's it's a different ID. But I guess you can also, do things like make it carriage return, and so there'll be unique values that it'll only match on, on that. But I think it's kind of, you're kind of getting the same thing with using JSON objects, and you don't have to worry about getting false matches. Does
I agree.
Quick survey on using JSON set element, all the JSON functions. Are people using them a lot, or are they? I mean, speaking for myself, I was pretty intimidated when using them, starting to use them at least. But I've been using it more and more, and I think I really see the value in doing things like this. But also, using them as script parameters or interacting with APIs and stuff like that. Does anybody else see that value too?
I like to use them, to use JSON a lot. It's just there's so many places where you still need in FileMaker data as a carriage return delimited list.
Right.
That's why I said there could be a case here where I would just implement the same with a straight list of IDs, and then I would use filter values to make that comparison, because filter values, if it returns anything that's not empty, your value is in there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And depending on how unique, if you're confident, if you're not just using serial numbers, I think that position, from what I've read, is a little more performant than pattern count because it dumps out after the first time it occurs. So if you have a really big list, the pattern count has to iterate through the whole list versus a position just finds the first value of it.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I use the position.
Yeah, that's a good thought. But again, if you're using numeric IDs, when you run into that same problem as with pattern count,
yeah,
if
absolutely. Yeah, then if you're using numeric IDs, then you're looking at filter value. Agreed.
I do everything for us is those would all be UUIDs, but also in the end downstream we're passing that array to an API that accepts JSON. So
right, so you may as well do it anyway, right?
Yeah, and it's not millions of records. It's usually it's going through a portal of maybe a dozen or so records or something small.
Let's see. I think Phil, I don't know if I'll get to the fifth thing here, but maybe if you want to hang around for a little longer, I could do the fuzzy search.
Keep going to the fourth one.
Okay.
See that one.
So I think I may have mentioned this in other CAFDA meetings. I'm not sure if I actually showed it. Maybe we showed it briefly, but I think it's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool feature that I don't think I've completely nailed down yet, but I think I got a working demo that I've actually used with this client, so I can show you that live demo too. But okay, fuzzy search feature is it's a set of UI features to search your database and display results, even if the search string doesn't match exactly to your search to your fields you're searching on. And I want to point out that I saw a pretty interesting DevCon presentation on something like this by Ernest Coe in 2019 in Orlando, where and that's included in that somewhere here. His slide deck's right there if you want to take a look. So I'd been working on this fuzzy search file prior to that, and I saw his demonstration, which I thought was pretty cool. He does it a little bit differently, but same principles apply. So let me just open up the file here. And so what we're looking at here is just a field to search the database. In here is just a demo database with contacts. And if I put in, say, something like Russ Johnson, so obviously my name is spelled wrong. Sometimes people call me Russ. I hit enter, I'm getting results below. Even though I spelled my name wrong, I'm still getting what I intended here, which is my name. And I can hit enter and pull up that contact record. And so what we're using here is a JavaScript library called Fuse. Pull that up real quick. It's Fuse.js. It's a really a lightweight fuzzy search library. And Fuse.js, like most fuzzy searches, uses at its core Levenshtein distance, which I can't really explain that well, but it boils down to how many changes have to be made from the input criteria to the search field to get them to match. So in this case here, you got a U instead of an O, so that's 1, and then a missing H, that's 2, and then it matches to this. So that's how you get the kind of search rankings. The fewer edits you have to make, the closer match it is. And there's all kinds of other things like, you know, weighting your search terms that Ernest Coe points out in his presentation, and things like soundex, which is like, you know, a C and a K can sound the same. So maybe those factor into better matches. But at any rate, this is just a small implementation to kind of just search contact records. In this case here, we're searching a database of about 35,000, something like that, contact records. And it's, I think I can anticipate a few questions of how slow would this get with a huge data set. And, you know, I've tested it with like a couple of 100,000 records on over a WAN. And if you're using it just based on an object save script trigger, it's pretty good. On object modify, it got a little clunky. So I kind of demonstrate both in this file, but this is on object save, and it's pretty performant.
Ross?
Yeah.
Are the results being returned there? Are those like prioritized by like the distance, the Levenstein?
Yeah, yeah, they are. They are. So that the Fuse library, JavaScript library, is kind of doing all that for you. So maybe I'll just kind of pull up the script debugger, and I'll do this example again. So if I hit enter, so on object save, okay, the first thing that I do, and there's probably much better ways to do this part of it, at least. Just run it here. All right. So I take the input string and break it into fragments, which I think they in search is referred to as n-grams, fragments of the search string. In this case, 3 characters. So for however many search terms you have in there. And so what that does is breaks it into the different fragments to search your table and to find possible matches in your database, where you have things that would start with the RUS, or things that would start with space JO, or with an SON. And the reason for doing this, and there are probably much better ways to do it, but is to narrow down your search results first to anything that could possibly match your search string. So you won't return every single contact record, because there are some names in here that don't contain any of these letters, or any combination of these letters, and so you want to keep those out from the outset. But yeah, if you run this query, you'll get a set of results here. So we get the result here. So I'm searching on the full name, but I'm returning the JSON representation of the full name and an ID. So get the full name here of everything we could possibly match, everything that matches those that SQL query. And I'm taking this and feeding it to the web viewer that's running the Fuse JavaScript library. So here you get the full, hell is it, HTML. So it's a lot of stuff here. Let me actually run it, and then I'll pull it up in brackets so you can see it better. So it's setting that web viewer, which is off layout here, and using that the web viewer is kind of an engine to process all of that, and use the Fuse library to give me an ordered list of IDs, essentially, to give me the best match first. And let me just pull up. So this is what Fuse looks like. So this is what I set the web viewer to. This is, it's using jQuery here. And then this is the Fuse library, all this on one line. And then here is just the script you add to kind of use the library in the Fuse library. And all I'm doing is merging in my result set here. And then once it orders those, and my input string here, sorry too. And once it orders those, matches those records and sorts them based on best match, I'm just taking the result of compiling a list of the record IDs and sending it back to my file here. So I substitute a file name as my fuzzy search, substitute a script name to run the script I want, and then send the parameter back is URL encoded. And then this is the magic function that will now run this. So use the URL callback to run this, to call this URL and run the script with the parameter. And that's what it's pointed to. Where's my code? Oh, it's right there. It's pointed to this script, which just pretty much just takes the parameter that's sent back to it and sets that as a virtual list array. So this is also using virtual list, and that appears here. So this is a portal that's pointed to the virtual list. And so it'll just look at this virtual list array here, which is just a list of IDs. I think it's capped at like 100 results or something. And then it's just showing that the related record to show the different results sorted.
How did you choose, when you did the fragment to cut the search list down, you did like three letters from the first name and then the first two last three? Is that what it was? Just the first three?
Yeah, it kind of, I found some sort of like Java code that I ported over into FileMaker that kind of did the same thing, that cut things into different n-grams. And I kind of just mirrored what they did, and I can't remember where I found that. But essentially what it's doing is just, it's counting how many fragments that you could have, so those n-grams that you could have in your string, and it's chopping up that search string into those different fragments.
Oh, okay.
And then I put an extra in here is just another kind of way to optimize if a user is putting in a space. In this case, they're searching against contact names. They put in a space, you can kind of assume that they're typing in a last name, and that you would want to include that that as a last name. So with the space and then the 3-character fragment.
And Ross, just correct me if I'm wrong, but because the technique relies on the amount of change or the distance in between the input and possible results, this is really agnostic when it comes to language. It will work just as well with Spanish, French, or you name it, or even with a data set that combines different languages. It doesn't care about that, right?
Great question. I don't think it would. So if I did, I don't know, a different character, that's obviously not a real name, but yeah, so it would kind of just ignore a character that you wouldn't typically find in English, but you may find in those other languages you were talking about, and match, because there's only one character difference, it would still match on this contact record.
Great, thanks.
Is there any other questions? One other thing maybe I want to point out is just this way to jump into the portal here and use the arrow keys to go through the different contact records. And if I hit enter, it'll open it up. The quick trick using just a dummy field that I called arrow that's kind of off portal view, oops. So if we make, this is a popover, invisible popover. And then I just put this arrow field here. And when you scroll through the results, it just goes to that arrow field, which is a global field and doesn't affect anything. And we should put it off, sort of off screen in the portal. The user won't even see it. But in order to actually go to a certain portal record, I found that you have to go into a field or go to a field to have that record active, and then you can just kind of monitor on keyboard stroke or object modifier or whatever if the user hits return enter to run a script.
And the arrow key is go ahead, Robert.
I'm sorry, I'm still a bit mesmerized here as to, well, it's just I would implement the trigger, but then you choose not to use like go to next portal row or.
Well, I think I'm trying to remember why exactly I did that, but I found that the go to next portal row wasn't doing what I needed it to do. It's been a while. I worked on this in 2017. I can't remember exactly why.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a reason why. I mean, I'm obviously using that script step to go to the next portal row and then going to the field. I can't remember why. I have to look at it again, but also you can take a look too if you've downloaded the file.
I'll be sure to do that. Thanks.
Oh yeah, Beverly found an old school custom function. I actually came across that one time, and I think your comment is the reason why I didn't go with that, because it takes forever to process. Ball lighting. They're just random company names.
Yes, we have 15 minutes left. Do you want to
okay.
get into your last one, or should we open it for questions in general, or what does everybody want to do?
Yeah, maybe we'll open for questions in general. This last one is pretty complex.
Okay.
And maybe we don't have enough time to get into it, but I don't know.
We can save it for next time.
We could save it for next time, yeah.
There. So how about March? Just kidding.
Maybe I just want to show you really fast just an implementation in real life of not just looking at contact records, but if I go back to that quote sheet thing I was looking at, where I'm using this here is to search. So this client will search a catalog of items that they have saved. They build a catalog as they go, as they build these quotes. And if they need to find an item from that catalog, they can come into here and just type it into the search box. And so if I do, I don't know, maybe like Steelcase chair, and I purposely, the brand Steelcase, that's not how it's spelled, and purposely misspelled it, I can hit enter, and then it should have been the first result. I'm not sure why that happened, but came up as their second result, and they can quickly kind of just scroll through those results and add them to their quote. All right, I think that's about it for me. If anyone has any questions, comments, thoughts.
I have a question. It's kind of a general question. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but if you go back to the find in page, and you create that thing, you've created this. So when you set out to do this, you kind of knew what you wanted to end up with, but how did you get there? Like, how much did you rely on trying to find stuff that was already created or ideas, or do you really just kind of go down it on your own path? Like, I'm going to figure this all out and create it myself, or does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. No, I mean, I think I like all of us probably try to mean, my general pattern is try to find something that exists out there and see if I can at least get inspiration, if not kind of use things that have worked for other people. But sometimes, you know, sometimes you have good luck with that, sometimes you don't. I think in this case, it didn't really find too much looking for just a way to find items in a found set. So yeah, I kind of just cooked this one up on my own, more or less.
So you're being inspired by the way it's done in other programs, like, you know, you showed the web browser, or is it just starting from a blank page and like, I'm just gonna
yeah, no, I think so. You know, that's a good question. So I think, yeah, the web browser find on page was the basis of what I wanted, the kind of functionality I wanted to work into FileMaker, which is not something that we really have. You know, there's not really native functionality to do something like that. But that was completely the inspiration. Even, you know, little egregiously copied the formatting of what you find in Chrome. But yeah, so the idea was because the request from the client was, yeah, if we have, you know, 200 line items here, how can I just find side table with it? And if we performed a find on their found set, now we lose context of it completely. And
right. You have to keep restarting over from the whole quote. Does anybody else have any questions about things you've seen or in general? A little plug in case you don't know it, but Disk FM in California is having their virtual FileMaker user group or developer group meeting at 11:30 or in 10 minutes, 11:30 Central, I think 9:30 Pacific. So I just found out about that. So if anybody's interested in going from one FileMaker meeting to another, you could probably get into that one also. I have a question for the group.
I can make a plug for that one. Some of my work, I think, is going to be demoed at that conference here soon.
Cool. Oh, good. Oh, there's somebody, Robert put it in the chat, FM Disk, the link for their Zoom. Has anybody been working in FileMaker Server 19? Has anybody used the Linux install yet?
No. Yes.
Who was the yes?
This is Michael Lane. Yes.
Yes. How's that running? How did the install go?
It went really smoothly. I've done it once on a VM on my local machine. I hope that's not someone is making some noise.
A little crinkling.
Yeah. I did it. I installed it once before it came out in its current version on a VM locally, and that ran fine. But that was several months ago. And then we installed it twice, one on DigitalOcean and one on Amazon. And we're not. It's not a production server yet, but we have a client that's actively testing right now. They're testing both using FileMaker client on that Linux server, and we have a web app that's running on top of it as well. And so far, so good. It really is. I think about some conversations I've had with Wim and some other people in a Slack channel is, you know, even though it seems like it just came out recently and it's new, it's really not. That stack and that code base has been running in the cloud for a while now. That's true. Yeah. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. As a matter of fact, I've also done some OData testing because I have problems with parsing the data you get back, whether it's Linux or any FileMaker server. The data API returns, the fully qualified field names, and that has problems for PHP and JavaScript without doing some hacks. And now that OData is available, you get the field names back as you would expect. So there's my 2 cents worth. Hopefully that answers the question. I
think I'll be doing it in the near future, so I was curious. And yeah, Wim has said it's good.
So, and I've also been doing some experimenting with it. This is Dale. again installed it on an Amazon server. In our case, it was we have a bunch of CWP applications, and so getting them to run when you don't have CWP support is an interesting trick. I found an API, a data API wrapper that mostly implements the CWP call. So if anyone is using the CWP, it's not horrible to get it running on the Linux side.
Is that FMPDA?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you. I could not remember the name.
Yeah, and Mark Denise, I think is his name. He did that a long time ago, but he also rewrote it to work with the data API. And that library we use extensively, and it's a great wrapper. And if you're having to do old school stuff, you can use what you're describing, Dale. And then if you're doing something more modern in PHP or using API as a backend, that's a great way to. I've rolled my own, and it's a lot easier to use his library.
Yes, it is. I will mention, if you want to go that route on a Linux server, it's much easier if you install the web server first before installing FileMaker Server 19, because otherwise things don't like to link up properly.
In the latest version I installed, and this is, I could be wrong, but I've had some conversations about this. When you install the Linux server, it won't start up right away because it doesn't know, it actually installs Apache.
Right.
It doesn't say anything about that. And you think you have to restart the machine, and there's a way not to have to restart the machine, and I don't recall what it is, but I did the same thing, but it turns out you don't have to do that. You just have to know how to kind of kick Apache going.
Right, but if you want to get the PHP plugin for Apache to work, you really need to install Apache before you install FileMaker Server's variant of Apache. I found that one out the hard way.
Okay, well, okay, so that makes sense because we're not talking the.
Yeah, if you're not doing PHP,
yeah,
then it doesn't matter at all. But if you are, I was unable to get the PHP module to ever talk with the Apache from FileMaker, and I finally gave up, installed the straight one, then put FileMaker on top of that, and everything worked. So I was happy.
Good tips.
Oh, has everybody heard that CentOS has been EOL'd, I guess, for lack of a better term, and CentOS
it has.
8, which was supposed to last for 10 years, is going to expire, I think, next year or maybe
this year.
This year, okay, yeah. And
well,
so
it depends. The version 8, I think, comes to expiration earlier than version 7.
Yeah, version
actually.
7 will last longer. And I pinged Rick about that and said, hey, I assume you guys have heard about this. What's the move? And he's like, well, we're currently kicking around some ideas. So I don't know if they're going to go to Rocky or go to a completely different variant that uses, a different package manager, or what that's going to look like. But it's pretty clear to me that they're still committed to Linux. And given that
I have installed it on Amazon Linux, and it does appear to work. I haven't done any extensive testing.
Cool. That's a good data point. But I mean, I think Claris's recent moves have been trending towards simplifying, supporting fewer versions back and trying to make their life simpler. And the simplest move of all is to just go to all, cloud first, right? So the simplest move of all is just to go to Linux servers only at some point. And so I think everybody who has not dabbled with this will need to get this tool in their tool chest and become Linux proficient and learn how to do FileMaker Server on Linux. And hey, I don't know if you guys use VMware, but Fusion makes it so easy to fire up a Linux thing. Just say, hey, I want to make a new VM and I want it to be Linux. I'm like, which one do you want? You pick one that says, wait right here, I'll go get it for you. And it just, boom, Linux. And so it'll just set everything up for you, and then you just throw FileMaker Server on it. It's dead simple. So do not be afraid. Try it out.
Thanks, Chris.
Sure.
Yeah, and just what Michael Lane said about the web server is you usually need to start it manually. I think, Michael, is the issue you were talking about. check if it's running. If it isn't running, just start it manually from the command line.
Well, I think that brings us to about the end of the meeting. There's less than a minute left. And I want to thank Ross, especially for Ross. It was a great presentation.
Good job,
Really
Ross.
good stuff. And
Well
glad
done.
we saved a little for next time. We won't wait 4 years to have you back. Have you back sooner. And
I'd like
thanks
to
for
show that PDF thing soon, so I'll come back for that.
Okay, and thanks for contributions at the end and the questions along the way. I really appreciate everybody's input. And like I said, I'll see you guys on February 5th. Thanks, everybody.